We are investing in growth, investing in Canadians, and investing in the future of this country.
The Liberals reveal the details of their economic plan. It includes cutting some Conservative programs, but spending $30 billion by the year 2020. My next guest is no stranger to the ins and outs of executing a fiscal plan. Kevin Page was Canada's first parliamentary budget officer appointed by Stephen Harper. He spent 5 years on balancing the books on Parliament Hill. He's just released a new book, Unaccountable: Truth and Lies on Parliament Hill, about his time working with the Conservative government. Page is now the Jean-Luc Pepin Research Chair at the University of Ottawa. Mr. Page, hello.
Hi, Andrew.
So you've had a chance to listen, I guess, or to see the Liberal Party. They've just laid out how they plan to execute a deficit for the next 3 years in their fiscal announcement about an hour ago, how they're going to cost out their platform. What did you make of it?
Well, Andrew, I think it's a good document. It's a substantive document. It outlines their fiscal policy approach for the next 5 years. I think it's realistic in the terms of, they've updated the numbers from budget 2015, so it takes into account a weaker economy in 2015, weaker oil prices. And I think it makes the case for we need to run these deficits because we have this weaker economy. It's a very transparent document. You get a sense of what's behind the measures, and it'll allow people to generate debate over the last 3 weeks of the campaign.
So, Mr. Page, you've said that you will endorse a party that promotes budget analysis and transparency. Are you saying that of the parties that the Liberals meet that threshold that you've set for yourself more than the others?
Well, I think, Andrew, what I could say is that we almost have a race to the top right now with respect to budget transparency, and this is a good thing. And maybe we'll hear more from other parties as a result of the release of the Liberal document today. Certainly in this document, commitments to even going forward for having the Parliamentary Budget Office, now an independent office, well, to be an independent officer of Parliament, but also to provide costing in the future of opposition party platforms, I think is a very good thing. I think what we heard from Mr. Mulcair earlier this week was a positive thing, talking about a fiscal charter with more analysis around the budgets. Is the deficit cyclical or structural, around sustainability? So I think these are very positive developments.
So are you saying that the NDP is filling in those holes in the Swiss cheese that you talked about earlier, that you weren't all that impressed? You found it flimsy, right? The NDP costing platform?
Well, I think if we go on their websites now, and Canadians should be encouraged to do this, and definitely look at the Green Party costed platform, a very detailed document. They were out in front of both the NDP and the Liberals, so you get again a very descriptive document by the Green Party. I think right now, I think the NDP, they have an opportunity perhaps to update their numbers. We're going to get new GDP figures next week. So we'll get a better sense of how strong the economy is. There's still an opportunity over the next week or so for them to provide more details on their costing. But I certainly like the direction. I think it's important not just to have what we call updated numbers, but to tell Canadians, how are you going to manage in a world of significant economic uncertainty? Prime Minister Harper did not see the big recession in 2009. I think a year ago, it's fair to say Prime Minister Harper did not see this recession that we had in the first half of this year. So how are you going to adjust your fiscal stance, your fiscal policy, when we deal with things that we cannot see at this point in time? But we're starting to get that type of information from the Liberals and the NDP.
Now, yesterday, Stephen Harper committed to a tax lock legislation. We actually saw him open up a safe and lock it away. This would be, if I understand it correctly, it would guarantee no tax hikes for the next 4 years, and it would be part of legislation, that it would be against the law. I guess you could rescind the law, a future government could rescind the law. What did you make of that?
Well, definitely, to me, it's a political ploy. It's like saying we're going to generate 1.3 million jobs between now and 2020. It's like saying we're going to have a balanced budget. Law, so it's to be the law of the land, have balanced budgets. And, I think we know when we look back that, again, in this world of significant economic uncertainty, where you can get an energy price shock or a financial crisis, that it could, quickly put a government of the day in a position where they're going to have to rethink those kinds of commitments. I don't think that, to me, that's particularly helpful. I worry, I think the real lock, so to speak, would be really on the Conservatives locking themselves into a position where they cannot really deal with some of the issues that, the country faces, including, on the defense policy, for example, it's clear now that, we have commitments on procurement that, the defense budget cannot afford. I think we're hearing from mayors that we need to deal with these infrastructure deficits. We're hearing from stakeholders in the health industry that, we need to think about, ways to lower costs in drugs. So we potentially need to consider raising revenues to deal with these significant issues.
In your book, you talk about the Conservative government investigating your background, and we have an excerpt from this. And this is what you write. If the government had been able to collect information that might have linked me to a pack of stolen gum from a drugstore when I was 11 years old, I'm sure the information would have been leaked. That's quite a telling moment. I guess what you're saying here is that you felt that this was very personal. Can you just expand on what you meant by that?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the relationship between the parliamentary budget officer, myself, and the governing party, the Conservative Party, got off to a bad start. I think they made it a personal relationship. I think when they were in opposition, they wanted somebody to kick the tires on numbers, on costings, on projections. I think when they got into power and we started putting out analysis that was transparent on costing Canada's engagement in Afghanistan or fighter planes or ships, that they found this to be, not helpful. And when we pushed at their austerity plans in budget 2012, where there was no details as to where the cuts are going to be made, they did not like that. So, yeah, I think we've lived in an environment now for a long period of time where we have a governing party that likes to use fear or intimidation to get people to, to change their behavior. I think, fortunately, the people that came to the parliamentary budget office, they were very comfortable in, just delivering on that mandate. So the book is really a story of that journey.
And so how did you just keep chugging along? What kind of kept you confident that you should stay in that job and you should continue doing what you were doing?
Well, I think it's finding that, the higher purpose in the nature of the work. I mean, the spirit of the Accountability Act was to really enhance transparency, to give parliamentarians this additional analysis. So I think that kept us going, and there were definitely times where we thought the PBO would be broken, and here we are today having a discussion looking at party platforms where all three opposition parties want to make the office independent and are talking about new enhancements to transparency. So it's a good thing. I feel it was worth hanging on. I'm glad the people in the office, they stayed and they continue to produce very good work.
It's interesting. The title of your book is Unaccountable. Are you trying to say that you felt as though that during your time under the Conservative government that government was unaccountable?
Well, I think we should be worried when information does not flow to the legislature. Again, it's the legislature's job to pass legislation. It's their job to hold the executive to account. I think we should be very concerned when they do not get that information. And we certainly saw that on many issues, fighter planes and crime bills. And on the case of crime bills, where the government was saying, we can't give you that information, it's a cabinet confidence, but please just vote anyways. I think when you get to that level, those breakdowns in the system, you're dealing with something that's very significant. And I think, the lessons learned from other countries is that institutions matter.
Mr. Page, good of you to take the time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Kevin Page is a former Canadian parliamentary budget officer and author of Unaccountable, Truth and Lies on Parliament Hill. We should note he has been consulted by the NDP and other parties in the past. He joined us by Skype from Thunder Bay, Ontario.